All right, so I talked a lot in the past about my laptop of choice. You may have even seen the previous video in which I showcased this laptop here. It's the X1 Carbon from Lenovo, thin, light. But really the reason I choose this over other laptops for the day-to-day is because of the keyboard. I'm a huge fan of the keyboard, and I really feel like keyboards on laptops have been going downhill over the past couple of years, past few years. That's what opened the gates for me to test out some various PCs and move over to Windows. But the ThinkPad line is not going to be for everyone. I mean, it's a utilitarian look to it. You see, it's got this like matte black finish, but that's not going to be for everyone. A lot of people are going to look around and say, I want my thing to be a little bit flashier, possibly a little bit more modern looking. This one is called the S940. It has an i7 1.8 gigahertz, 8 gigs RAM, 256 storage, a 14-inch UHD IPS panel. Well, what's the retail cost on this one? $1,800 USD, but the S940 starts at $1,400 for a lower spec. I found this particular laptop to be exciting. You have a kind of really polished looking laptop, but with some of the attributes from the ThinkPad that I like. It's a 14-inch laptop. That's a tiny little box, by the way. It's pretty tiny. That's a 65 watt USB Type-C connector. I found this charger, which is like this tiny little brick, capable of charging these laptops via USB-C, and that's my go-to travel charger of choice now. Here's the laptop. This is the box. That's wild. That is super tiny. Wow. So it's 2.6 pounds, and the X1 Carbon is 2.5. So it's about the same. Maybe it's just the metal playing tricks with me here. So it's a bit darker than Space Gray. I think I actually like it more, to be honest. It's kind of into charcoal territory. Look at the form factor. That's wild. That's a 15-inch MacBook Pro. And this is the S940. The Carbon is a bit taller because the aspect ratio on the screen is different in this case. And this guy's going to be a bit wider if I place it on top. Oh, it's almost exactly the same. It is exactly the same. Okay. So most of our gains then in the display department, display size department, are the shrinking bezels. The bezels are tiny on this. Smartphone-esque. They even went so far as moving the front-facing camera above. It's kind of notched out into the top part of the display. If I hold my hand behind it, you can see it actually jumps up a little bit. Now, the other nice thing, this is a single-handed lift. This is pretty nice, guys. The keyboard is not ThinkPad level. There's just not as much travel in the keys. These ones are more like a traditional keyboard. This is more like a chiclet style that you would be used to on a more modern keyboard deck. All right, so I also see the Dolby Atmos speaker system logo here, and it looks like the speaker grills are here, so that could be an improvement. Either way, I like the fact that they carried through a similar scale with each key and curvature. 2 Thunderbolts on this side over here. Lots of potential expandability there and speed. Over on the other side, you got your power connector in the form of a USB Type-C connector and a headphone jack. You're lacking a little bit in diversity of ports when compared to the ThinkPad lineup, which is going to give you quite a few connectors on here. An HDMI port on this guy. The display is wild. There's almost no bezel around it. It is crazy slender on each side, including the top with the expanding front-facing camera. Now, the reason they did this, you've seen other manufacturers that want to have a really slim bezel on their laptops. You've seen them put cameras in all kinds of crazy places, including down below here. Huawei has done that in the past. But then you get this weird front-facing camera for video conferencing that like looks up people's noses. So you got to appreciate the engineering on that front. You'll see how crazy different it is when compared to the ThinkPad. I mean, this baby, triple the size of a chin, maybe. Now, this display, the UHD display on here, is definitely better, obviously, than the FHD one that I have on that X1 Carbon over there. I mean, the range from the black to the white there, the deep blacks over here, it's just a better display. And, of course, it's got more resolution as well. That's a no contest in the display zone. I mean, look at this. This looks great. I mean, that's like all display. That's pretty wild. This is the main advantage. This is... If you spot this thing at a coffee shop, you're like, wow, I want one of those. And this is probably the reason why. Everybody wants portability, but they don't want to give up visibility. You don't want to give up the multimedia component and immersion and productivity that comes with having a larger display. I can't say that the keyboard is competing in any way with the ThinkPad keyboard. So you got to decide like what is more important to you and why. So let's go ahead and turn up the volume here.
Have around Apple and iPhones that's all they need. It's all they want. They're set for life. There's definitely a customer base that believes that, and then also
the speakers are much better than my ThinkPad.
The shape of it. It's a nice thing to hold in one hand. So
very clear. I honestly do not even need to play the speakers off the X1 Carbon to you. Yeah, I'm happy with the speakers. Anyway, so if you're wondering why it's important to have the camera, the webcam up at the top, and why they had to design that in there, I mean, that would have taken tremendous effort to get that to fit in up there. This is the purpose. This is the reason. I'm looking directly into it. If I happen to be on Skype, if I happen to be doing a video conference, Kirk, you just did a video conference, in fact. If the camera was popping up from the bottom, then it's going to be more like this. Jack, can you see this? Can you get there? It's more like this. Now you're looking up my nose. Now, it's not the greatest camera. I mean, it's like a little 720p webcam up there, so keep that in mind. But still, to cram it in up top, this is where we're at. On smartphones, it's the same story. Where do you put the front-facing camera? It seems to be the one characteristic that informs so much of the design. And now you're seeing the same thing in laptops, where they're trying to figure out where to put it, and they're trying to figure out how to minimize bezels. So the trackpad, I'm probably going to say that maybe it's even a little bit nicer to use than on the ThinkPad. It's responsive. It's acceptable. So it's not a substitute for me. I wouldn't even say it's particularly special. I would say it's a pretty typical keyboard. But as a package deal, I think it's a pretty slick laptop, to be honest. It's got almost no bezel. They found a way to fit the front-facing camera in the right spot. The keyboard is usable. The trackpad is nice. It's got enough I/O for most people with the double Thunderbolt and the headphone jack. So there's advantages and disadvantages. The overall look, I mean, I think this thing probably crushes for most people. It's a very slick and slender design. A lot of times, the reason you end up liking a particular laptop has to do with your own personal preference around form factor, or ergonomics. It's a bit more difficult to put your finger on why you like one better than the other. So really in this case, I'm gonna use this a bit more extensively and see where I land, but something's telling me I'm just a ThinkPad guy. I don't know if I can get away from it. Now, the keyboard, it's been so rewarding. I mean, it's a place I like to live. I mean, I just can't wait to like respond to emails, and I hate email. So that's gotta tell you something about what Lenovo's been able to package up in the X1 Carbon. That's a crazy popular laptop, and for good reason. But this thing's slick. It's more modern. It looks more futuristic. I think it's going to be appealing to some people.